An unexpected visit that changed everything. When a black SUV pulls up without a glance at the gates of the Naval Academy, no one expects who gets out. Donald Trump is on a secret mission, carrying a leather briefcase. Why is he here? And why is Sarah Miller, a cadet with a tragic past, at the center of all this? But that's just the beginning. Endurance tests, hidden motives, tough dialogues, and shocking decisions. This story is out of the ordinary. When Malik, a teenager who believes in nothing, appears and Trump makes him an unexpected offer, the stakes are even higher. So here's the big question. A simple mentoring program or a well-thought-out plan that can change the country? Watch until the end. The ending will surprise you. The man nobody expected. The Naval Academy in Annapolis was living according to its usual routine. Morning roll call, marching on the parade ground, commands of attention and at ease. All according to regulations, no surprises. But on this day, the order began to crack. A black SUV pulled up to the gate without a horn. The engine was turned off, and for a second there was deathly silence. No one came out. "Who is this?" whispered one of the cadets, craning his neck. The door swung open, and he passed out of the car. A reddish crest, a dark suit, a slightly raised chin, Trump. The radio in the guard booth started twitching. Is there confirmation? Did someone tell us that he arrived? The answer is not correct. Nobody knew anything. He just showed up. Some whispered, "It can't be," while others were already pulling out their phones, but they were filming furtively, fearing a breach of discipline. Trump walked calmly through the gate, ignoring the whispers. He carried a small leather briefcase. At that moment, one of the instructors walked across the parade ground, glaring at the cadets, hinting that they should all get back to work. But it was too late. Everyone was looking only at him. "Are you filming this?" whispered one of the younger cadets. "Oh, shut up," hissed another. The president stopped at the main building and looked at the flag over the academy. Then he slowly turned his head and looked straight at the cadets lining up. "I want to see the best," he said loudly. For a second, no one moved. The training officer glanced quickly at the duty officer. "Bring Captain Simons immediately." As everyone began to move, Trump pulled out his phone, pressed a few buttons, and raised it to his ear. "I'm here." "Yes, no one knew I was coming." That's exactly how it should be. He put the phone in his pocket and smiled. "Let's see who the real leader is here." Outside the gates of the academy, someone was already speaking on camera. "It's bloody weird. Just came out of nowhere. Nobody knows why." And as Trump stepped forward, his briefcase almost swung into his hand. What's there? What did he bring? And most importantly, what is he actually doing here? The conversation that changed everything. The Naval Academy's training hall was filled with select cadets. The air was tense. The situation was too unexpected. No one knew what to expect. The door opened. Donald Trump walked in, looking around the room with an unreadable expression. No one said a word. Captain Simons took a step forward. "Mr. President, before you are the best of the best." The plans were realized, slowly walking along the building, carefully examining faces. He did not ask names, did not look at shoulder straps. Something else was important to him. He stopped in front of Sarah Miller. "You," he said. She instantly stood at attention. "Sir." Trump put his hands behind his back. "Why are you here?" It was a simple question, but there was something provocative about it. Sarah didn't like talking about herself, especially in front of strangers, especially him. "I always wanted to serve, sir." Trump narrowed his eyes. "Nonsense. This is too general an answer." The room became even quieter. "I asked why you were here." "For real." Sarah shook the pieces. "My father was a captain. He died at sea." Trump came up with an idea, but didn't give an answer. He looked at her as if he was checking if she was telling the truth. "And you decided to follow in his footsteps?" "He always said that service is an honor." Trump took a step closer. "Did he say anything? Or do you want to find something for him?" Sarah felt a chill run through her in response. This man saw right through her. "I want him to be proud of me," she said quietly. "He would be proud by now," Trump replied. For a few seconds, something unexpected appeared in his gaze. A human being, almost warm. But exactly a moment later, the expression became cold and complex again. "Miller, right?" "Yes, sir." Trump shook his head slightly. "Let's see what you made it out of." He turned to Captain Simons. "Give her a test." "Right now?" Simons looked at him in confusion. "Are you sure, sir?" "Absolutely." Sarah swallowed. "What test, sir?" Trump smiled. "You have to research it." The silence in the room became almost palpable. No one knew what happened next. But one thing was clear. This was not just a visit. This man came here with a clear purpose. And Sarah Miller, without knowing it, just found herself in the middle of this game. The test that no one passes. The wind blew across the parade ground, raising dust and scattering dry leaves. Sarah stood at the start of the runway, in the hollows of her heels in the ground. Behind her, the cadets lined up, and ahead, a tough track that would not pass without bruises and pain. Trump stood with his hands on his chest. Miller, are you ready? Sarah kept her eyes on the stripes. Yes, sir. An instructor came up next to him, tall, sinewy, with a cold gaze. The president wants to see what you can do. To pass this route means money, that you are a leader. He chuckled. Nobody does it the first time. Sarah didn't answer. She already knew one thing. She couldn't lose. Go ahead, Trump said, and she rushed forward. The first barrier is height. The first problem was the vertical wall. It was high and smooth. Sarah jumped, grabbed the edge, but her hands slipped. Faster, the instructor shouted. She pulled back, opened deeper, and jumped again. This time her fingers gripped the edge tighter, her muscles tensed. With a dull thud, her body fell over the top. Further on, dirt. Upon landing, she immediately encountered a new problem, a narrow tunnel covered in mud and debris. Crawl, Miller. No running here. She dove down, feeling the wet earth cling to her skin. There was sharp metal ahead, rusty wires, set too low. If you catch it, you lose, the instructor's voice rang out. Sarah held her breath and crawled, trying not to touch anything unnecessary. Ropes that strangle. As she emerged from the tunnel, she crashed into a wall of suspended ropes. A trap. Sarah glanced at Trump. He looked at her calmly, without even blinking. She stepped forward. The ropes wrapped around her legs, caught her arms, and cut off her breathing. If you panic, you're dead. She closed her eyes and rushed forward. The ropes cut through the casing, but she kept moving until confidence burst forth. In front of her, there was the last barrier, a long section where she had to run without thinking about the pain. My legs were cramping. Every cell in my body was screaming, stop. But Sarah didn't stop. She ran, gritting her teeth. And when her hand hit the finish wall, the world stood still for a second. She did it. The cadets were silent. The instructor was silent. Trump approached slowly. You said it was impossible. Sarah heard, breathing heavily. But you did it. He smiled. These are the kind of people I need. Sarah didn't know what that meant. But he knew one thing. The game had just begun. Trump's secret plan. Sarah was still breathing heavily as she stood at the finish line. Her arms were shaking. Her muscles were on fire. But inside there was a strange feeling. Not of victory, no, of something more. She looked up. Trump looked at her with a smile that was hard to read. Miller, you surprise me, he said, slowly moving closer. There were cadets and instructors standing around. Everyone was silent. They also wanted to know what was going on here. Trump unzipped his leather briefcase. The room grew even quieter. He took out a thin pen and opened it. Operation Valor, he said, as if testing how it sounded. The cadets looked at each other. Sarah frowned. What is this? Trump leaned closer. New program. Leadership. Accountability. Mentoring. We are pregnant with people like you, and we are giving them a real challenge. Sarah felt a slight pressure on her chest. Which? Trump looked her straight in the eyes. You take a teenager from a large family under your wing and make him a leader. If you can do it, you're more than just a cadet. Someone gasped quietly. Simons, who had kept a low profile until now, spoke up. Mr. President, do you understand that this is a fairly common occurrence? Trump took a close look at him. I know that I work. Sarah stood, thinking about what she had heard. Do you want us to educate street children? No. Trump chuckled. I want you to make fighters out of them. As if on cue, the door to the hall opened. A thin teenager of about 15 stood on the threshold. Meet him, Trump said. This is Malik, your new protege. The guy crossed his arms over his chest. His look said more than words. I don't care about any of this. Sarah gritted her teeth. She had just gone through the most difficult trials of her life. But now something much more complicated has begun. The boy who believed in nothing. Sarah looked at Malik silently. He stood in the doorway, arms folded across his chest, as if he didn't care about anything that had happened. He glanced lazily around the room, then settled his gaze on her. Is this the cool military girl who will raise me? His voice was full of mockery. Sarah clenched her jaw, but remained outwardly calm. I'm not going to educate you. Malik grinned. Well, then we'll get along great. Behind them, Trump chuckled. Excellent. Already contact. Malik immediately turned to face him. Look, Mr. Billionaire, I know what this program is. You accept people like me to look good on the news. Is this like your charity? Trump bowed his head, as he was told to do in his report. Do you always say what you think? Always, Malik said. Trump smiled. Okay, then here's the truth. You'll either learn to play in a team, or you'll end up back where no one sees or hears you. Malik narrowed his eyes. Are you threatening me? No, Trump replied calmly. I'm offering you an opportunity, and you either take it or you stay who you are now. Sarah turned Trump's gaze to Malika. The boy was still defiant, but now there was a glimmer of doubt in his eyes. So what? He grinned. Let's say I agree. What next? Sarah straightened her arms over her chest. From now on you come with me. Where? Let's see what you made it out of. Malik snorted, but still stepped forward. Trump looked at Sarah. Keep me updated. She nodded. Malik turned to face her. If you think that I will build along your lines of visibility, you are very much mistaken. Sarah smiled. I'll have a look. And when they walked out the door, Trump looked at them with an expression that was hard to decipher. This boy didn't yet know what awaited him. But the most interesting part was just beginning. An unexpected ally. Sarah didn't know what to expect from her first meeting with the Maliki family, but it certainly wasn't this. The apartment in one of Baltimore's poor neighborhoods was tiny. The walls were peeling. The furniture looked worn, but it was clean. The sound of boiling water could be heard in the kitchen, and the air smelled of coffee and something sweet. Malik opened the door and threw over his shoulder. Mom, we have guests. The woman sitting at the small table by the window looked up. She looked tired, but there was warmth in her eyes. Oh, welcome, she smiled at Sarah, but when she saw the man behind her, she froze. Trump took a step forward. Miss Partner, he said in an even voice. Malik's mother covered her mouth with her hand. Oh my God, is it really you? Malik crossed his arms. Yeah, now you understand why I said it was weird? Sarah stood a little to the side, watching this clash of two worlds. Miss Accomplice wiped her hands on her apron and walked slowly over. I'm sorry, I don't even know what to say. Trump smiled slightly. Let me tell you. He took an envelope out of his inside pocket and put it on the table. It's a scholarship. A full one. For Malika. Silence tore through the air. Malik blinked. What? Trump leaned toward him. You're talented. You're not just some kid off the street. I've seen your ship plans. I've seen you analyze designs. You think outside the box. And you get a chance. Miss Answer pressed her hand to her chest. This is the answer to my prayers. Sarah looked at Malik. He looked at the envelope, then at his mother. There was something new in his eyes. This isn't bribery, he asked quietly. Trump chuckled. No, it's a door. The only question is whether you go through it or stay here. Malik looked at his mother. She appeared. He swallowed and raised his head. I will try. Trump pointed. Then don't let me down. For the first time, Sarah saw uncertainty and determination in Malik's eyes. This means that the first step has been taken. But the hardest part has just begun. A breakthrough no one expected. The camp was miles away from the academy. There were no comfortable beds, no Wi-Fi, no hot coffee. Just tents, brutal training, and assignments designed for the weak. Malik hated every minute of it. This is crap, he muttered, lowering himself near the tent. Sarah glanced at him quickly. If you don't like it, leave. Oh, so that was possible? He asked sarcastically, raising an eyebrow. Of course, she said. But then you'll always be the one who gives up first. Malik narrowed his eyes. Was it a psychological trick? If it worked, then yes. He crossed his arms over his chest, but did not leave. The first day passed in a blur. In the morning, a forced march. In the afternoon, rope tests. In the evening, tactical tasks. On the second day, Malik began to get angry. What kind of nonsense is this? He said when they were given the task of building a model ship from scrap materials. It's for leadership, Sarah said calmly. That's idiocy, he snapped. Trump, standing at a distance, just watched. Other groups had already begun assembly, but Malik's team was marking time. Damn, this is going to fall apart in a minute. Someone threw a board on the ground. Malik looked irritated. Give it here. He crouched down, grabbed the plan, and began to draw it right on the sand. Look, here the center of gravity goes to the left. We need a building. One of the cadets chuckled. How do you even know? Malik didn't even raise his head. Because if you do it the way you want, it will sink faster than your belief in yourself. Sarah watched carefully. You are sure? He looked at her. Give me a command. For the first time, there was no doubt in his voice, only determination. Okay, Commander, Sarah said. Show me what you can do. After some time, their ship was the only one that did not fall apart during testing. When the referee announced the result, Malik Zammer. And then, for the first time ever, he smiled. Sarah clapped him on the shoulder. Welcome to the team. At that moment, the U.S. president made a decision, as he saw exactly what he was waiting for. A breakthrough has occurred, but the stakes only grew from there. A legacy that cannot be forgotten. Sarah sat on a wooden bench in the command tent. The camp was almost empty, the last of the Operation Valor members packing up their things in preparation for departure. Malik stood a few feet away, looking at his notebook. The entire sheet was covered in blueprints. He no longer looked like the same guy who had crossed his arms on the first day of the call. What now? He asked without looking up. Sarah smiled slightly. Now you decide for yourself. He grinned, but without his usual sarcasm. No one believed that I could build anything. Not a single teacher, not a single neighbor. He closed the notebook. And now I even feel sorry to leave. Sarah didn't answer. Instead, she pulled a folded piece of paper out of her pocket and handed it to him. What is this? An official invitation to the engineering program. The university is waiting for your response. Malik blinked. Are you serious? She nodded. He looked at the paper for a long time, then slowly squeezed it in his hand. Crap. An expression that could have been mistaken for shock crossed his face. At that moment, Trump approached him. How are you, fighter? Malik was deeply surprised. I'm in. Trump smiled. That's what I thought. Malik turned his gaze to Sarah. Thank you. Sarah raised an eyebrow slightly. For what? For not giving up when I tried to be ugly. She chuckled. Oh, I haven't forgotten yet what a freak you were. He shook his head. I thought it was all just politics. Just a show. But now I understand. He looks deeply. That's really true. Trump looked at him with approval. Remember this moment. Because one day you will find yourself on the other end, and the fate of others will depend on you. Malik was seriously surprised. The bus honked, signaling the sender. He shook hands with the invitation and took a last look at the camp. I'll come back. We'll wait, Sarah said. When the bus left, Trump turned into Sarah. Good job. She nodded. What next? Trump looked out over the horizon. We are expanding the program. Sarah smiled. The game has just begun. Operation Valor. The decision that changed destiny. He didn't believe in himself. He thought that this world was not for him. But one unexpected decision changed everything. Malik entered the camp as a skeptic, but became a leader in the country. Sarah accepted the challenge, but even she could not have predicted that this path would betray her. And Trump? He just opened the door. But each of them had to go through it. What next? Malik is already standing in front of the university, inviting him on his arm. Sarah knows that a new mission lies ahead. Operation Valor now protects the entire country. One program, one meeting, one opportunity. Some serious decision changes your whole life. Don't miss a new story. Subscribe to the channel, like, and click the bell to find out what fates will change next.